The space above the skeleton mountain range rippled, and at that moment, the shocked gazes of various forces were fixed on an old figure that had once again appeared. This figure was none other than the Heavenly Vulture Emperor, one of the three sovereigns of the great Luo Domain. A low murmur of astonishment spread among the forces present. What exactly had happened deep within the fallen battlefield, and why had these top-tier experts suddenly appeared? As for Chen, the Xun'er king, and the Nine Nether, seeing the sudden appearance of the Heavenly Vulture Emperor, they all let out a sigh of relief. With the Heavenly Vulture Emperor here, the Netherworld Palace would no longer be able to do anything to them today. The expression of the Netherfire Elder darkened slightly as the Heavenly Vulture Emperor appeared. He then snorted coldly. "You old immortal really can't let go of your restless soul." The Heavenly Vulture Emperor smiled and glanced at the Heavenly Evil King, whom he had frozen in place. He then casually said, "All right, let's end today's matter here." "End it here?" The Netherfire Elder sneered. "You of the great Luo Domain killed our Netherworld Palace's only battle formation master. Do you think this matter is so easily dismissed? Wasn't it you who killed him?" The Heavenly Vulture Emperor chuckled. "However, considering that you've lost a battle formation master, we of the great Luo Domain won't make you hand over the 400,000 fallen source pills." He was quite generous, waving his hand to forego the 400,000 fallen source pills, knowing full well that there was no way the Netherfire Elder would hand them over, especially now that the Earth's supreme treasure had been discovered. "You." The Netherfire Elder's eyes flashed with a vicious gleam, and his cold gaze shifted toward Chen. The moment Chen's eyes met his, a chill ran down his spine, as though a venomous snake had locked its sights on him. This made Chen's expression shift slightly, for he knew that if an 8th grade Supreme was determined to kill him, he would be in a very dangerous situation, and even the Xun'er king would be unable to protect him. When the Heavenly Vulture Emperor made his move, he easily subdued the Heavenly Evil King, who was at the 7th grade Supreme level. Though it was due to a surprise attack, it still clearly demonstrated the vast difference between the 7th and 8th grade Supremes. Netherfire, I advise you to rein in your thoughts. If you make a move, the Heavenly Evil King might very well be immediately erased by me. Just as the Netherfire Elder's eyes glowed with murderous intent, the Heavenly Vulture Emperor's calm voice came again. If you want to cause a situation where both sides lose, I don't think it will be of any benefit to the Netherworld Palace. The Netherfire Elder's eyes darkened further, his gaze fixed on Chen. But in the end, he slowly turned away, knowing that the Heavenly Vulture Emperor was right. No matter how fast he struck, even if he did kill Chen in a thunderous strike, their Netherworld Palace would lose a 7th grade Supreme in the process. That would be even more painful than losing Lin Ming. This time, consider it a ruthless blow from the great Luo Domain, but don't get too proud. Once our Palace Master finds out, we won't let you off so easily." The Netherfire Elder sneered coldly. Then with a snort, he waved his sleeve and disappeared into thin air. When he reappeared, he was already before the Netherworld Palace's army. At the same time, the Heavenly Vulture Emperor, along with the Ice River King, appeared before the kings of the great Luo Domain. Both were top-tier experts at the 8th grade Supreme level, so they didn't waste time with unnecessary tactics, knowing full well that if they truly disregarded everything and fought, the losses on both sides would be catastrophic. Heavenly Vulture Emperor. The kings of the great Luo Domain immediately clasped their fists and bowed when they saw the Heavenly Vulture Emperor appear before them. The Heavenly Vulture Emperor smiled and waved his hand, then turned his gaze to Chen, saying with a smile, "Congratulations, King, for becoming a battle formation master. After all these years, we finally have a battle formation master in the great Luo Domain." He paused for a moment before asking the most important question: "How is the collection of the fallen source pills going?" "After the statistics, we have a total of 430,000 fallen source pills in our possession," the Xun'er king replied. 430,000, huh? The Heavenly Vulture Emperor's eyes brightened, and he smiled in satisfaction. "Not bad. It's much more than last time's grand hunting war. This time, although the Earth's supreme treasure we discovered is a bit unusual, it should be enough. If it weren't for King leading the charge in this grand hunting war, we might not have been able to collect enough fallen source pills." "That's right. Most of the 430,000 fallen source pills were obtained by Mu King and his group, Xun'er King said candidly, without hiding anything. Hearing this, Heavenly Vulture Emperor couldn't help but glance at Mu Chen in surprise. He hadn't expected the latter to perform so outstandingly in this grand hunting war. Even the normally proud mountain-splitting king and Xun'er King now regarded him with respect, treating him so courteously. Mountain-splitting king has overestimated me. If it weren't for the cooperation of all the kings, I'd probably be powerless too, Mu Chen said, a little surprised that mountain-splitting king had pushed him forward. However, he didn't show any arrogance or pride, merely smiling as he spoke. It seems that the Domain Lord and Nine Nether didn't make the wrong judgment, Heavenly Vulture Emperor said with admiration for Mu Chen's calm and composed demeanor. He sighed slightly, remarking, "In the beginning, I was kind to you purely because of Nine Nether's influence. Later, it was due to the great Luo Domain Master's favor. But now, I finally realize that this young man truly possesses some unique charm and abilities." Mu Chen had climbed from the most ordinary leader in the great Luo Heaven Domain, advancing step by step. His progress was truly jaw-dropping and remarkable, and no one could predict how far he would go in the future. Seeing Mu Chen gain recognition across the entire great Luo Heaven Domain, Nine Nether couldn't help but feel pleased for him. She then smiled and said, "Old Vulture, you mentioned earlier that the Domain Lord has already found the Earth's supreme treasure?" Upon hearing this, the kings immediately perked up, listening closely. They had fought tooth and nail in the fallen battlefield, all to prepare for unlocking the Earth's supreme treasure. Since they had no way to search for the treasure themselves, they had no choice but to rely on the Domain Lord. Heavenly Vulture Emperor nodded with a smile, then spoke with a trace of helplessness. "Yes, the Earth's supreme treasure has been found, but there was a bit of an unexpected turn." Unexpected? Mu Chen and the others were shocked to hear this. In the depths of the fallen battlefield lies the most violent region. The spiritual energy storms there can strike at any moment, and even Earth's supreme level experts must tread carefully. After several failed explorations, we finally discovered traces of an Earth supreme treasure. The magnificence of this treasure surpasses any other we've found before, Heavenly Vulture Emperor said slowly. Oh, the kings were all alert, their spirits lifted. However, because this Earth's supreme treasure is so magnificent, it has drawn the attention of the leaders of the top forces, Heavenly Vulture Emperor said with helplessness. Mu Chen and the others were stunned, and their scalp tingled at the thought. Just imagining 6 or 7 Earth Supreme level super experts surrounding the treasure, eyeing it like hawks, sent a chill down their spines. If they fought, it would truly shake the heavens and split the earth. Their small conflicts now seemed insignificant compared to that level of power. "What should we do now?" Nine Nether asked. "We must prepare to head deeper into the fallen battlefield. No matter what, we cannot give up on this Earth Supreme treasure. From the scale of its grandeur, its former owner must have been incredibly powerful. If we can obtain the spiritual divine liquid left behind, the Domain Lord might be able to break through to the upper Earth Supreme level. But if the Lord of the Divine Pavilion or Lord of the Netherworld Palace, or people like Lu Tiandao get their hands on it, it would not bode well for the great Luo Heaven Domain," Heavenly Vulture Emperor said solemnly. The others nodded in agreement. While they didn't know the exact difference between Lower Earth Supreme and Upper Earth Supreme, the way Heavenly Vulture Emperor spoke about it made it clear that the gap was enormous, and the fate of the entire great Luo Heaven Domain would be tied to it. Seeing their resolve, Heavenly Vulture Emperor waved his hand, and immediately, the massive forces of the great Luo Heaven Domain began to mobilize. As the forces began their movement, Heavenly Vulture Emperor's gaze suddenly sharpened. Mu Chen and the others instinctively looked up, their expressions slightly trembling. At that moment, the space around them began to twist, and several figures began to emerge from the void. Each of these figures exuded an immense oppressive aura that made the very heavens and earth tremble. Meanwhile, forces from top factions like the Demon Gate and Xintian Palace let out cheers. With the discovery of the Supreme Earth Supreme Treasure, the top experts of the leading forces quickly made their move, appearing to assist the massive forces under their command. "These guys sure are quick to show up," the Heavenly Vulture Emperor remarked with a faint smile, but without pausing for a moment. He waved his hand, and vast spiritual light radiated from his body, forming a light screen that stretched tens of thousands of feet, enveloping all the forces within the great Luo Heaven Domain. Let's go. The Heavenly Vulture Emperor's figure shot forward, and the enormous light screen covered the forces of the great Luo Heaven Domain, sweeping across the sky like a rolling cloud, disappearing into the horizon in the blink of an eye. After the departure of the Heavenly Vulture Emperor and his group, the remaining top forces quickly finished their preparations and shot into the sky. The first-rate forces watching from the surrounding area couldn't help but sigh. They knew that the real main event of the Grand Hunting War was about to begin, and only those forces with an Earth Supreme presence would be qualified to participate. Once the Grand Hunting War was over, no one knew how much the power structure in the Northern Domain would change. These top forces in the Northern Domain were bound to face a reshuffling, and some would stand tall, while others would crumble and fall. Deep within the fallen battlefield, this was a region so violent it struck fear into the hearts of all who witnessed it. The sky was always shrouded in darkness, and terrifying spiritual energy storms ravaged the land. Where these storms passed, mountains were reduced to rubble, with only the peaks of certain mountains, made of pure cold iron, capable of withstanding the onslaught. Even an 8th-grade Supreme couldn't break them with all their strength. The land was dotted with vast, bottomless abysses, resembling the sprawling body of a black dragon. The deep shadows sent chills through anyone who gazed upon them. A sinister wind howled from within the abyss, almost resembling the wails of ghosts. Faintly, one could see shadowy figures floating in the dark. These were the shattered divine souls of fallen experts, now nothing more than wandering spirits, devoid of consciousness, yet still retaining the power they had in life. These figures were highly aggressive, attacking anyone who dared to approach. This region seemed like a realm of death, with no signs of life. Whoosh! However, this eerie silence was soon shattered. A streak of rainbow light, spanning thousands of feet, surged through the darkened sky, and within that light, a massive army advanced. This army, naturally, was made up of forces from the great Luo Heaven Domain, led by the Heavenly Vulture Emperor. Despite having the Heavenly Vulture Emperor's protection, the army advanced with extreme caution. They didn't dare fly too high in the sky, sticking to low altitudes near the ground. Even so, with each step, the Heavenly Vulture Emperor altered their route, sometimes taking detours that extended their journey, but this careful navigation avoided the areas ravaged by the spiritual energy storms. The storms in the deep fallen battlefield were far more terrifying than those outside. Should the forces of the great Luo Heaven Domain be caught in one, they would be utterly destroyed. Even the Heavenly Vulture Emperor would only be able to barely protect himself. Yet despite the Heavenly Vulture Emperor's efforts, they couldn't avoid all the storms. Thankfully, he had anticipated this and led the forces into the massive Black Mountain, seeking shelter within its core. As the army sheltered inside the mountain, Chen and the other kings stood at the entrance of the cave. Outside, the dark gray spiritual energy storm was already sweeping through the land, distorting the very space around it. Chen, along with the 9 Nether and the other kings, watched solemnly as the spiritual energy storm rampaged outside. They could feel its terrifying force, and they knew that if they were caught in it, death would be inevitable. Luckily, when the Domain Lord was searching for the Earth's supreme treasure, they also mapped out a safe route. Otherwise, if we had barged in recklessly, we would have been wiped out by now, 9 Nether remarked with a sigh. They had already faced countless hardships within the fallen battlefield and had barely made it this far. Chen nodded lightly. Indeed, the depths of the fallen battlefield were extremely dangerous. No wonder even the Heavenly Vulture Emperor was so cautious. He glanced at the dim and desolate world outside, his eyes narrowing slightly. Perhaps because his mental will had grown stronger, his perception had become exceptionally sharp, allowing him to detect subtle fluctuations in the surroundings. There seemed to be numerous hidden waves of energy, exuding a dangerous aura that made Chen hesitate to probe further. He feared provoking some kind of disaster. In such a place, a moment of carelessness could mean never leaving again. In the ancient catastrophe, when the extraterritorial tribes invaded the Great Thousand Worlds, this place became a massive battlefield. According to records from some ancient texts, over 10 Earth's supreme-level powerhouses from the Great Thousand Worlds fell here, and that doesn't even account for the extraterritorial beings who fell here, whose power was comparable to that of an Earth Supreme, the Heavenly Vulture Emperor said with a faint smile. Chen and the others couldn't help but be shocked. The number of Earth Supremes that fell here was likely greater than the combined strength of all the top-tier powerhouses in the Northern Domain. This truly revealed the terrifying scale of the ancient invasion, which had swept across the entire Great Thousand World. Heavenly Vulture Emperor, how much longer until we reach the Earth's supreme relic discovered by the Domain Lord? A Xun'er king asked, looking at the Heavenly Vulture Emperor. At this pace, it should take another 2 days, the Heavenly Vulture Emperor replied. If he were alone, his speed could be several times faster, but given the massive army accompanying them, it couldn't be helped. Also, if you sense any abnormal spatial fluctuations during the journey, don't provoke them. Too many powerful beings have fallen here, and most of them hid themselves in the torn void before their demise. Although their minds dissipated, due to the unique nature of the fallen battlefield, their bodies and some of their former strength remain. If disturbed, they will attack frantically, the Heavenly Vulture Emperor warned. Previously, when I was probing with the Spirit Pupil Emperor, we accidentally woke up a soul. Even with the two of us working together, we could only barely drive it away. Understood. Everyone shuddered upon hearing this. Even with the combined strength of the Heavenly Vulture Emperor and the Spirit Pupil Emperor, they could only defend themselves, which meant the soul's strength before death was likely at least at the 9th grade supreme level. Some might even have been on the verge of reaching the Earth supreme level. This further emphasized the perilous nature of the fallen battlefield's depths. The army waited within the mountains for the spiritual energy storm to dissipate before continuing their journey. The path ahead remained full of obstacles, and without the guidance of the Heavenly Vulture Emperor, Chen and the others estimated that barely anyone from their army would survive. Although the journey was slow and arduous, they had, fortunately, encountered no major dangers. By the end of the second day, the army had finally passed through towering black mountains, only to be struck with shock by the scene before them. Beyond those black peaks, the raging spiritual energy storm abruptly vanished, and even the spiritual energy in the air seemed to calm down. What stunned Chen and the others was not the silence, but the scene ahead. The very sky and earth appeared shattered, the space itself seeming to have been torn apart by a terrifying force. Numerous black cracks twisted like ferocious jaws, writhing in the air. Through those cracks, faint light flickered. Chen and the others could vaguely make out a massive black pyramid, floating silently deep within the shattered space. The pyramid was so vast that it was beyond description. In comparison, Chen and the others felt like mere specks of dust. The sheer magnitude of it sent a shockwave through them, making many feel a tingling sensation on the back of their necks. That black pyramid is the Earth's supreme relic we discovered, the Heavenly Vulture Emperor said with a sigh as he gazed at the shattered space ahead. The space here was likely torn apart by a terrifying wave of spiritual energy in ancient times. From our estimates, an Upper Earth Supreme must have perished here. Upper Earth Supreme? Chen and the others sucked in a cold breath. Their current Domain Lord, Mandala, was only a Lower Earth Supreme, and the gap between Lower and Upper Earth Supremes was vast. Moreover, there seemed to be no such existence anywhere in the Northern Domain. Otherwise, the power balance in the Northern Domain wouldn't be so stable. An Upper Earth Supreme alone could change the entire structure of the Northern Domain. As Chen and the others were still in shock from the appearance of the black pyramid within the shattered space, the space in front of them rippled slightly. Then, a young and familiar voice rang out. From the distorted space, 3 figures emerged. The leading figure was small and delicate, unmistakably the Domain Lord of the great Luo Heaven Domain, Mandala. Behind her were the sleeping king and the Spirit Pupil Emperor, closely following her. Greetings, Domain Lord. As soon as Mandala appeared, the various kings quickly bowed. Behind them, the massive army also knelt down. Mandala waved her small hand lightly, and her golden eyes turned to Chen among the kings. A hint of surprise crossed her small face as she smiled and said, "You've become a battle formation master?" Mu Chen smiled and nodded. Hee hee. Not only has Mu Chen become a battle formation master, but in fact, the battle formation master from the Netherworld Palace also perished at his hands. In this grand hunting war, Mu Chen has made a great contribution, said the Heavenly Vulture Emperor with a laugh, and then proceeded to recount Mu Chen's achievements in the grand hunting war. Oh. Upon hearing the Heavenly Vulture Emperor's words, Mandala, Sleeping King, and Spirit Pupil Emperor were all somewhat surprised. They hadn't expected that Mu Chen, who had not been particularly outstanding among the kings, would have such an impressive performance in this grand hunting war. Does that mean you've gathered enough Fallen Source pills? Mandala's small face broke into a smile, clearly pleased and satisfied with Mu Chen's performance. Over 400,000 Fallen Source pills. All here, said the Heavenly Vulture Emperor, waving his sleeve. A Qian Kuan bracelet flew towards Mandala. Mandala took it with her small hand, sensing it slightly. The smile on her face grew even more intense. She then turned her head and looked at the dark rifts in the shattered space. She sighed deeply and said, "Next, we can try to break the seal." Mu Chen and the others followed her gaze and only then noticed that within the shattered dark rifts, ancient runes were appearing, forming barriers that sealed the broken space within. Mu Chen focused on the ancient runes. Suddenly, his mind stirred, as he felt this spirit-seeking compass he had obtained in the fallen battlefield becoming extremely hot at that moment. This change caused Mu Chen to stiffen. His heart began to beat rapidly as he suddenly remembered what Senior Shao Qingyun had said, that the spirit-seeking compass would guide him to the location of the Fourth Hall Master's ruins in the ancient Heavenly Palace. Could it be that the dark pyramid in front of them was left behind by the Fourth Hall Master of the ancient Heavenly Palace? The movement of the spirit-seeking compass startled Mu Chen, but it also filled him with excitement. If this truly was the super relic left by the Fourth Hall Master of the ancient Heavenly Palace, perhaps he could obtain some information about the ancient Heavenly Palace from it. What's wrong? Mandala noticed the change in Mu Chen's expression and immediately asked. Mu Chen smiled upon hearing this and didn't hide anything. He explained everything he knew. Ancient Heavenly Palace, Fourth Hall Master? Hearing Mu Chen's words, the Heavenly Vulture Emperor and the others were shocked. Although they didn't have a clear understanding of the Fourth Hall Master, they knew how powerful the ancient Heavenly Palace had been. In ancient times, the ancient Heavenly Palace was the ruler of the Tianluo continent. Even though it had long since perished, its ruins were still somewhere on the continent. Over the years, the top forces of the continent had spent countless efforts searching for it. Mu Chen nodded and looked at Mandala. He noticed that her small face was momentarily dazed, but she quickly recovered and thoughtfully said, "The Fourth Hall Master? I did come across something about him in ancient records. It seems he did fall in this ancient battlefield, but I didn't expect it would be here. And it said that he fought the devouring evil emperor to the point where the heavens and earth were in chaos, and both perished in the end." Devouring evil emperor? Mu Chen and the others were slightly stunned. He was a powerful being from an outer race, with strength comparable to that of an upper earth supreme. He was one of the commanders who invaded the Tianluo continent back then, Mandala explained. Then, her golden eyes turned towards the dark pyramid deep within the shattered space. A glint of light flickered in her gaze as she slowly said, "If this is truly the remains left by the Fourth Hall Master, the spiritual divine liquid he left behind must be incredibly powerful. We absolutely cannot let the forces of the Divine Hall get their hands on it, or else it will undoubtedly disrupt the balance of the Northern Domain, and with their nature, our great Luo Heaven Domain will be the first to suffer." Mu Chen nodded, calming the emotions in his heart. His gaze shifted to other parts of the world, and he asked with some confusion, "Didn't the other top forces also have their sights set on this relic? Why haven't we seen them? This shattered space is vast. The other top forces are spread out in different directions, quite far from one another. There's no specific entrance to this Earth Supreme relic. As long as you have enough Fallen Source pills, you can enter from anywhere," Mandala said with a smile. Mu Chen was momentarily stunned, but he quickly understood. Although using this approach could save a considerable amount of Fallen Source pills, it was obvious that this was not what the top forces intended. They would rather spend more than let another faction take advantage. If anyone didn't have enough fallen source pills, they would simply have to return home. At this point, it was more important for the top forces to reduce the number of competitors. At this time, everyone had to rely on themselves. If one couldn't rely on themselves, it could only mean they were not qualified to compete for the Earth Supreme Relic. The Earth Supreme Relic is full of dangers, so only the various kings can enter with me. The rest will remain here, ready to assist at any moment. Mandala glanced at the vast army behind them. In such a perilous place like the Earth Supreme Relic, bringing such a large army would not be of much help. Instead, it would create chaos and risk triggering some unforeseen consequences, leading to unimaginable results. The Heavenly Vulture Emperor and the others nodded. The reason the army was allowed to enter was mainly out of concern that without the protection of the various kings, the army would be easily surrounded outside. However, here, despite its apparent danger, it was actually extremely safe. However, this means Mu King will have to bear a bit of hardship, said the mountain-splitting king and the others, looking at Mu Chun. It was a pity that the army could not enter, and it seemed the most unfortunate was Mu Chun. After all, as a battle formation master, without an army, his combat power would be significantly reduced. But in response to their sympathy, Mu Chun calmly smiled and said, "Although battle intent is a shortcut, relying too much on it may backfire. The power I possess is not limited to just battle intent." His voice was calm, but there was no hint of arrogance. In his black eyes, light surged, emanating from his trust in himself. For Mu Chun, while battle intent could certainly be an added advantage, it was still a power borrowed from external forces. In this world, only what one cultivated within oneself was truly stable and unchanging. Therefore, even though Mu Chun had been pleasantly surprised when he first realized he possessed the talent to control battle intent, he had never considered abandoning his own cultivation for the sake of it. Thus, even without battle intent, Mu Chun remained confident that with his own abilities, he would not be ordinary. This point, he had long since proven through his actions over the years. When the mountain-splitting king and the others heard Mu Chun's calm words, they were first taken aback, then gradually became serious. A trace of admiration rose in their hearts. After all, after mastering such a convenient and powerful force as battle intent, to still regard it so calmly, such a rock-solid mindset was something even they could not guarantee to achieve. At this moment, they faintly began to understand why this young man had risen so rapidly in the great Luo Heaven Domain within just 2 years. Well said, a true strong person is not controlled by power, but controls power. Mandala lightly clapped her hands, her face full of admiration. Even the normally drowsy sleeping king opened his eyes and glanced at Mu Chun, seemingly equally surprised by Mu Chun's mindset. Mu Chun, on the other hand, felt a bit awkward at Mandala's praise, so he could only smile awkwardly and shrug. He just felt that relying too much on battle intent wasn't wise, in case one day when he lost his army, he would suddenly fall from the clouds and perhaps never have a chance to recover. "Let's move out," Mandala smiled, not saying much more. She lightly raised her hand, and her body slowly floated into the air, with the 3 sovereigns following closely behind. After them, Mu Chun, the 9 Nether, the Xun'er king, and others followed. Such a lineup was truly impressive and could be considered the cream of the crop from the great Luo Heaven Domain. If anything unexpected were to happen within the Earth Supreme Relic, the entire great Luo Heaven Domain would likely collapse in an instant. Mu Chun and the others followed Mandala, and after a while, they gradually approached the shattered space. As they got closer, they realized the terrifying pressure exerted by the black cracks that intersected each other. The black cracks twisted and wriggled in the void, with ancient runes flowing between them. Mu Chun and the others stood before a spatial rift. Although the rift was sealed with runic inscriptions, the subtle oppressive feeling emanating from it still made it hard for them to breathe. Even Mandala, facing these rifts, had a serious expression on her small face. When they first discovered this ruin, she had tried to use the power of the lower Earth Supreme to forcibly tear apart the runes, but the result was clear: she failed. Too many powerful beings had fallen in the fallen battlefield, including some who were even stronger than her in terms of Earth Supreme strength. The fall of these powerful beings had caused the entire fallen battlefield to be shrouded in a unique and powerful force. This force could not directly attack, but it had a protective power, as though it were guarding the peaceful slumber of the many souls who had perished here. This was the rule of the fallen battlefield. Even beings as powerful as Mandala could not break this rule. Mandala gently clenched her small hand, and the Qian Kuan bracelet appeared in her palm. With a gentle swipe, a hum echoed as torrents of energy surged out from the Qian Kuan bracelet. These torrents, resembling giant serpents, coiled in front of Mandala. Inside these torrents were countless fallen source pills, probably no less than 100,000. As these enormous quantities of fallen source pills appeared, an extraordinarily intense fragrance filled the air. When Mu Chun and the others inhaled it, they felt their spiritual energy become unusually excited. The spiritual energy contained in these 100,000 fallen source pills was likely denser than 1,000,000 supreme spiritual liquids. Even a powerful being at the 5th grade supreme level would likely experience significant progress in their spiritual energy after refining and absorbing them. Mandala, however, merely watched the fallen source pills calmly. Her small hand closed, and with a light rub, the torrents formed by the fallen source pills exploded and were compressed together by an incredibly powerful force. The torrents quickly began to shrink. In just a few breaths, the nearly 100,000 fallen source pills were reduced to sticky liquid. This liquid flowed slowly through the void, but wherever it passed, the space itself twisted, as though this tiny liquid contained a weight far greater than mountains. Mu Chun and the others could only watch in awe. If it were him refining these 100,000 fallen source pills, it would likely take months. Yet, for Mandala, it was just a simple gesture. This showed just how terrifying a lower earth supreme-level powerhouse could be. Mandala's golden eyes blinked lightly, then she flicked her finger. Instantly, the sticky liquid formed from the fallen source pills shot out and began dripping. Sizzle. As the liquid dripped, even the ancient runes that Mandala couldn't do anything about began to tremble rapidly. Then, amidst the rising green smoke, Mu Chun and the others were overjoyed to see the ancient runes gradually dimming. When the runes had faded to the extreme, they completely dissolved away. In less than half a minute, the runic seals, which had been filled with immense oppression, were completely melted away by the fallen source pill liquid. The gate leading to the lower earth supreme treasure was finally opened. Sizzle. The ancient runes dissolved under the corrosion of the fallen source pill liquid. In just a few breaths, the runic seal in front of Mu Chun and the others slowly tore apart, revealing a gap of about 10 meters in size. As the gap appeared, an ancient, primal aura surged out. The oppressive force contained within it immediately caused Mu Chun and the others to freeze. The ancient aura carried a sense of tragedy, as though it had witnessed the destructive battle between the Fourth Hall Master and the devouring evil emperor in ancient times. Mandala's calm face remained unshaken. With a gentle wave of her hand, she dispersed the ancient aura, allowing Mu Chun and the others to regain their freedom. However, their faces clearly showed some unease. This was indeed the lower earth supreme treasure, so dangerous that even just the aura from entering was enough to leave them deeply shaken. In such a perilous place, if they hadn't had Mandala leading them, they probably wouldn't have dared to venture here. Mandala's tender voice, at this moment, instilled a powerful sense of security in all the powerful warriors of the great Luo Heaven Domain. As soon as her words fell, she was the first to step into the spatial rift. Behind her, the three sovereigns and other kings, including Mu Chun, immediately surged forward and entered as well. As Mu Chun and the others crossed into the spatial rift, they were immediately struck by an ancient and wild aura sweeping over them. However, they had somewhat prepared for this, so they gradually adapted. They then lifted their heads, scanning their surroundings, observing this unfamiliar space. The space here resembled a starry sky, shrouded in a dim, faint darkness. The space twisted intermittently, emitting violent and chaotic fluctuations. Among the shattered space, countless giant rocks of various sizes floated. Some of the larger ones were as massive as mountain peaks. However, after a quick glance, Mu Chun and the others' eyes quickly fixed on a distant point. In the far-off void, an enormous, Indescribable dark golden pyramids stood quietly. Even from an extreme distance, the overwhelming pressure and shock it radiated caused Chen and the others to involuntarily gasp. Some of these floating stone islands must be hiding the remains of fallen powerful beings. If we're lucky, we might be able to obtain some ancient divine artifacts, divine arts, divine pills, and other treasures, Mandala remarked as she glanced at the floating stone islands. Upon hearing Mandala's words, the king's eyes immediately lit up. Mandala smiled faintly and said, "The 3 sovereigns and I will scout ahead. You can explore on your own. If you encounter danger, crush the spirit jade I gave you earlier, and I will come to your aid." This grand hunting war had earned the king some merits, and now that they had finally entered a treasure-filled realm, Mandala was more than happy to let them seek their own opportunities. "Thank you, Domain Lord," the kings responded, their faces full of joy. Any powerful being that had fallen near the Earth's supreme level would undoubtedly be a top-tier figure. If they could obtain some of the items they left behind, it would greatly enhance their own combat abilities. Mandala nodded, her golden eyes briefly meeting Chen's, signaling him to stay cautious. Then, she and the 3 sovereigns swiftly shot off like streaks of light. Seeing Mandala and the others leave, the kings exchanged glances, smiled at each other, and then quickly dispersed, heading toward the floating stone islands in the void. Chen and Nine Nether didn't split up, instead choosing to team up and fly out aimlessly, their sharp eyes constantly scanning the floating stone islands. As the groups separated, the quiet space soon echoed with the sounds of stone islands shattering. These were the kings forcefully smashing the stone islands to search for the relics left behind by the fallen powerhouses. Though this method was a bit brute force, it was evidently highly efficient in the current situation. Boom! Chen punched out, his overwhelming spiritual power roaring. With a single fierce punch, he blasted apart a giant rock the size of 100 meters. Debris scattered in all directions, but there was no sign of anything else. Seeing this, Chen helplessly shrugged at Nine Nether. The number of floating boulders in this space was uncertain, and searching like this truly relied on luck. Nine Nether tilted her head slightly, as if hearing some distant laughter. She pursed her lips and said, "Seems like someone found something. Wonder who the lucky one is." Chen smiled and was about to move on when suddenly, he felt a slight stirring in his heart. He clenched his fist, and the spirit-seeking compass appeared in his hand. This spirit-seeking compass is especially sensitive to spiritual energy fluctuations. If there are any ancient relics nearby, it should be able to sense them, Chen muttered. Nine Nether's beautiful eyes flashed with delight. If the spirit-seeking compass really had this effect, it would be an excellent treasure hunting tool, far more efficient than their brute force approach of smashing rocks. Chen gripped the spirit-seeking compass and swiftly took off. While he wasn't sure whether the compass would work here, he thought it was worth a try. Whoosh! The two quickly flew past the floating stone islands, avoiding the areas with spatial distortions. In just a minute or two, they had passed dozens of islands. However, to their disappointment, the spirit-seeking compass remained silent in their hands. It seems the spirit-seeking compass doesn't work here. Chen also sighed lightly, ready to give up, but just as his sigh faded, a sudden buzzing sound rang out. Though faint, the buzzing sound was still noticed by Chen and Nine Nether. The two immediately froze, looking down at the spirit-seeking compass. On the compass, which had remained still until now, a small light point had finally appeared. "It's moving!" Nine Nether exclaimed in delight. Chen's eyes also brightened. He glanced around and soon focused his gaze on a stone island not far to the right. The island was inconspicuous, about 100 meters in size, and it seemed rather ordinary compared to the many floating stone islands in the void. However, Chen knew that the light point on the spirit-seeking compass pointed directly to it. Chen and Nine Nether exchanged a glance. In a flash, their figures appeared in front of the stone island. At the same time, both struck out with a palm. The overwhelming spiritual power swept across, and with one strike, the stone island shattered into pieces. Whoosh! As the stones flew apart, Chen and Nine Nether's eyes lit up. Amidst the flying debris, two rays of light shot out. The two quickly split and moved, flashing to the front of the rays. With a palm strike, they formed a spiritual power ring, immediately trapping the rays inside. Bang! Bang! Within the spiritual power ring, the rays were like wild bulls, frantically crashing around. They caused the ring to ripple with waves. The force of their impact surprised Mu Chen, who quickly channeled more spiritual power, gradually suppressing the rays. Once the rays settled down, Mu Chen focused his gaze and saw a blood-red long needle, as thin as a hair, hidden within the rays. Though it appeared insignificant, Mu Chen's sharp eyes could discern countless runes carved into its shaft. Furthermore, each rune resembled a fierce beast's face. Dark red light surged across the needle's surface, and the faint murderous aura emanating from it made Mu Chen's heart skip a beat. Mu Chen cautiously infused a trace of spiritual power, silently flowing into the blood needle. After tens of thousands of years, the needle had no master, so Mu Chen easily gained control over it. As soon as Mu Chen took control, information flowed into his mind. Beast Blood Needle, a consumable top-grade divine artifact, forged from the blood essence of countless beasts. It is ferocious and domineering, requiring the user's own blood to activate. The stronger the blood, the greater the power. It's actually a consumable top-grade divine artifact. Mu Chen grinned. Though such artifacts have the drawback of not being able to last long, their power was much stronger than ordinary top-grade artifacts. Moreover, this item was extremely discreet, making it hard to defend against. In combat, it could deliver unexpected and devastating effects. As Mu Chen silently rejoiced, Nine Nether also returned. A smile she couldn't hide appeared on her cold, elegant face, clearly delighted with her own find. Mu Chen glanced at Nine Nether, but before he could ask, she opened her palm. In her hand was a pill the size of a dragon's eye, glowing with a faint green light. On its surface, a phoenix-shaped illusion slowly spiraled, accompanied by a faint, clear phoenix cry. An ancient and rich medicinal fragrance emanated from the pill, causing Mu Chen's spiritual energy to surge with a subtle intensity. "What is this?" Mu Chen asked in surprise. "It's the Phoenix Transformation Divine Pill, crafted from the blood essence of the Phoenix clan. If a divine beast of the same type consumes it, it will enhance their bloodline power. If the chance is great enough, it can even transform a crow into a phoenix." Nine Nether smiled. Mu Chen clicked his tongue in admiration. He hadn't expected Nine Nether to acquire such a divine pill. As the Nine Nether Soul Sparrow, her body contained the bloodline of the undying bird, which was part of the Phoenix clan. For her, this pill was nothing short of a treasure. This treasure hunt, aided by the spirit-seeking compass, had indeed brought great rewards for both Mu Chen and Nine Nether. "Let's hurry and investigate further," Nine Nether said as she put away the Phoenix Transformation Divine Pill, her desire for more treasures clearly ignited. This area was truly a treasure trove for them. Mu Chen smiled and nodded. The two of them rushed out once again, and the spirit-seeking compass revealed its magical power once more. In just a few minutes, it responded again, and this time, the detection left both Mu Chen and the Nine Nether stunned. Because the light spots on the spirit-seeking compass had suddenly become as dazzling as a blazing sun. Such a detection phenomenon had never appeared even when they initially detected a level 1 relic. The earlier results from the Stone Island were in stark contrast to what they were experiencing now. Mu Chen and Nine Nether stared at the spirit-seeking compass in shock, then took a deep breath. What kind of object could cause such a reaction from the spirit-seeking compass?